Well, hello. Welcome everybody that is joining us today for our Swanepoel Trends Report preview webinar. We've got people coming in right now, so I see a lot of folks joining. Hello, Christian, Chris, Andrew, Becky, Cotty, Danny Deedle in the house. Great to see you, Danny. It's been a while. Gina, Grayson. So we got tons of people coming on. We're going to give people a moment to get connected up, and then we're going to dive into our content. My name is Jack Miller. I'm the president and CEO of T360. Today I have Paul Hagee with us, Paul is our editor-in-chief and is also an associate partner. He's part of the partnership group of T360. We're delighted to have you, Paul, and I know this is this body of work you drove this year, and it's a big body of work, and I know it was a lot of work. So we're glad to have you.
I'm excited to finally talk about some of the details of it after months of work and hundreds of hours of time. And you and I have been over a lot of the details of the chapters, and I'm excited to talk about some of them today. And I think it's probably the best report we've done, and it's great to be able to say that, I think, every year. But this one's at over 250 pages, which is kind of
significant. Yeah, it's a significant report. It's got just a lot more content in it. And Paul, how long have you been writing with us for the Trends Report? I'm losing track of the years.
So I started I started to help with some copy editing back in as early as 2015, and I've taken on increasing growing roles with the report. An executive editor starting in 2019 report, and then this is the first year as editor-in-chief, which is a great responsibility. As you mentioned, it's an immense challenge as we try to digest all the stuff that's happening and put it into a very, very kind of comprehensive but also understandable set of chapters. So yeah, it's been a few years. So kind of taking the next step with taking more of a bite of this thing.
Perfect. Well, I'm going to turn, since this is really the work you drove for us. I'm going to turn you over. You lead us through it. As you know, I've read through the chapters and have developed. I have some things definitely to add into this, but why don't you take it through it and tell us where you want to start?
Okay. So I'm very excited to talk a little bit more about the report. It's coming out digitally November 7th, and it goes, the print edition comes out December 7th or early December. And as we mentioned, 250 pages, and we've done this every year for the past 18 years. And so this is the goal of the Trends Report, is to kind of digest the residential real estate brokerage industry and cover the most important trends and activities shaping the industry for the next 18 to 24 months. And so it comes out the end of the year. The idea is for leaders to use it in strategic planning and to really use it as an opportunity to say, somebody's really thought about and synthesized some of these larger movements that are happening in the industry. And here's it presented in one place that can help us organize our thinking and maybe our strategy around how we're taking advantage and responding to some of these trends. And so today is the first time we're going to be talking about some of the chapters that are coming out in the report early next month. And so I would love to, if we switch to the chapter, the table of contents here.
Yeah, here we go.
So I think the idea here is, Jack, is like you and I both read these multiple times, and I would love to just bounce around for the audience and introduce them first, and then talk a little bit about each one to show them a little bit of the scope and some of the insight that's available in the report. So quickly running through the chapters we have in chapter 10, we have a collection of real estate stats and data that leaders, I suspect, might not look at every day. And it's an interesting collection. Dr. Paul Bishop, our economist on staff, helped put that one together. And I think it's a really great, insightful update on some of the contextual analysis of the industry stats related, not necessarily related to brokerage, but to housing. And I think it's a very good synopsis there. And in chapter 9, we have analyzing the American Dream, which essentially we look at all we look at several of the key studies, academic research studies about what is the impact of home ownership on families, communities, and individuals. And it's kind of a synopsis of this is the foundation of the brokerage industry, of like a deep, this is what we're doing. We're helping people with homes. So it provides some actual data from actual research about what is the actual impact of this world we operate in. And I think it's just a great touchstone for people. That's the idea to look at what does the research say. In chapter 8, we looked at we picked some companies that are making moves and are interesting, but are not necessarily covered in day to day, and they're not necessarily making announcements, but there's something to say about they're making big moves, and we'll go into some of the details of those later in the call. But I think it was a really good opportunity to look at some of the companies and provide a brief synopsis. We talked to the leaders of all the companies, and we're like, where are they headed, and that type of thing. And in chapter 7, we have the real estate talent playbook, which is working with Kelly at T3 Talent, Kelly White. And we just kind of do what's the smart way that brokerages should be hiring now, and thinking about hiring. And a lot of things are changing, as you know, as everyone knows in the industry. And what are the processes by which we go? What should we apply, and the smart strategy now? In chapter 6, everybody knows, and we've seen a steady cadence of news related to the increasing presence of investors in the single-family housing space. We wanted to turn kind of an analytical lens on what exactly is happening and the impact. It's not exactly what you might think. You hear the increasing presence, but what does that mean, and how does it actually play out? And again, Dr. Paul Bishop played a really, really vital role in turning his economist lens and his PhD brain onto this. And it provides like a really, beyond the headlines, it provides a deeper understanding of actually what's happening and what are the flavors of the investor presence in the space, and how is it changing and why. And I think it's a really great one. Then we have some leader interviews. We like to every now and then and report to all these trends and movements are interesting, but how are leaders actually trying to confront these, and how are they taking advantage of these? And so we have some interviews that kind of shed some light on how some leaders are actually adapting to how the industry is changing. Mm-hmm. In chapter 5, we have Opendoor. We all know Opendoor, and it's a very hot topic. We take a step back, as we like to do in the trends report, and synthesize kind of where it's been, where it's headed, and how it fits into this larger trend of alternative real estate finance, and kind of show where it's headed and where some of its opportunities lie, and some of its new experiments, and you kind of see the shape of where this company will be if it's able to make itself a sustainable, larger presence in the market. We know it has.
I think people think the iBuyer thing, and that was all Opendoor has done. And I learned a lot from the chapter, Paul. It's very rich.
I did too. Putting these together as you're trying to synthesize this, it kind of comes out. And in chapter 4, we do an analysis of Home Services of America. We had the opportunity to talk to some of the leadership and dive in and have a deep kind of analysis of the company, how it's operated, where it's been, and where it's headed. And it's the nation's most profitable brokerage company, or one of them. And it's kind of, I don't know about you, Jack, but it's kind of been it's always a little bit, they keep things tight to the chest there.
Yes, they do.
Midwestern through and through, but
yeah.
they really opened their company up to us. And I think we have a pretty good digest there.
It is honestly, I think I learned a ton from that chapter too. It's the most home services, I think, they don't talk about themselves a lot in the industry.
No.
They're a little bit of a black box. And so it was really great to spend time with their leadership and understand their company better. I think anybody that reads that chapter is going to learn a lot, not just about HSA, but about strategy and real estate leadership.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's like every time we talked to multiple different leaders, I was like, hey, I'm gonna try to get you guys open a little bit, because they're very as you know, like they tend to operate, they let their actions speak, and so that's an interesting, compelling chapter. I'm really happy we have that one. And then chapter 3, we have kind of an analysis or a suggestion of how brokerages can really respond to and take advantage of where technology is in 2023. And we have a great kind of rubric to help brokerages digest that in the chapter there. We'll go into maybe a little bit more detail when we run through the chapters, but it turned to a great chapter. And I really am happy with it. I know as a tech guy yourself, Jack.
Super helpful. You know, I think we're in a new era for technology and real estate, and it's time to hit the reset button and really look at what we've built over the last 20 years, 22 years in the industry, really since the IDX rules. And I think this chapter provides that guidance for hitting that reset and saying, let's look at what we do and address some tough things like adoption rates and what tech you decide to provide, all that.
Yeah, so we've passed the idea of tech being new or flashy, or it's a foundational element. And then what do we do and how do we match it to, or how companies match the technology to their business models, their brands, their goals, like all that really strategic thinking. This kind of helps provide a model for brokerages to think about that. And then we have chapter 2. Any association folks or most folks on the call might glaze over at that title because I think it's been used throughout.
We've been talking about the future of MLS a lot. Yeah, the industry talks about the future of MLS a lot, but this one really does. I think gets to the heart of what we see the big changes are in MLS, some of the challenges, and some of the collaborative work that's being done right now. Which I think, again, I actually think the brokers. This is a really important chapter for brokers to read. Because of most brokers are unaware. If you're an MLS executive, you're probably aware of some of the initiatives, but a lot of brokers are not. And you guys really should. You should be aware of what's happening in MLS because there's some big stuff is moving around in MLS right now, and
there's some foundational changes.
Yeah.
And we kind of sketched the beginning of what it looks like where things are developing, and actually some of the smart, innovative MLS leaders are actively looking at evolving the industry toward. And I think it might surprise people who read this and kind of get the synthesis of where it is and where things might be headed. And I think it's a great chapter. Then we have a bonus chapter that will go live that we'll announce upon publication on November 7th. So stay tuned for that. That's chapter 1. That's our top chapter. We're going to save some of that for entry for that.
Yeah, we'll keep some powder dry. So
yeah. Okay, so we want to dive into a few of the chapters and go a little bit deeper. Jack, which one do you think we should start with and talk a little bit about some of the details and what stood out to you?
I think I want to start with the technology chapter just because our tech team, the consulting team, contributed to that and give a little bit more color to tech.
Yes.
This industry spent billions and billions of dollars on tech and lead generation, over the last 20 years, and has built whole new entire companies. And, most brokerages have gone out and purchased and acquired a lot of technology. So we moved through a phase where, I'd say in the early 2000s to 2005, 2006, 2007, technology was just the shiny object that I think the industry used, especially on the brokerage side, to recruit and to say, hey, we have this, and this is all new, and websites and property search and all this kind of stuff is new things that you can have as an agent if you come and join our firm. And then probably for another decade, then we scratched our heads and saying, why aren't agents using this stuff? Or, this stuff isn't very good, or it doesn't talk to each other, or that company went out of business, that company got acquired. So we had just a whole lot of change over that period of time where I think we, as an industry, we were figuring out what the models are for applying tech into our industry. And, how do you even have functional technology? And how do we get just up and running and start getting real about it? And that leaves us where we are today, which is, we have companies that, especially over this run up, the market we've been in, a lot of companies have a lot of tech today. So as we sell, with our clients, like everybody has everything, right? That's
Yes.
Everybody's got websites, everybody's got property search, everybody has
CRM.
CRM. Everybody has everything, and the agents are mostly not using a lot of it. It's what it is.
Yep.
So this chapter, I think the key takeaway for me in this chapter is the developing a technology profile for your business that matches your business model and says, you know, are you a company? And these are some of the questions you ask, like, are you a company that generates leads for your agents, or do the agents focus on lead generation? You know, how do you do that? Are you a company that invests in innovating in technology? Do you have a group that is doing that? Or do you work with partners like your vendors, or maybe you have some agents in your company that are really innovative? Like, kind of what is your orientation in technology? How do you do support? Do you rely on a vendor to do it? Do you do it in-house? You know, how do you approach adoption? Are you an early adopter, a kind of mid adopter, or a laggard? You adopt tech late after it's really been proven. So understanding that helps people pick tech that matches
it's so
their model.
critical, because as you know, there's so many approaches that work, but it only works if you're able to tune it to exactly how you operate, how you want to operate, and your strengths and weaknesses. And it's like, I know when we developed the rubric with the tech team, and you and I helped too. It's amazing. It's really clear. It's like agent service level. What is your brokerage's, or what is your firm's approach to agent service level? Is it high? Is it low? Digital adoption. Are you early adopter, late adopter, high adopter, low adopter? What's your consumer data approach? Do you get consumer data, or do you leave it apart? It's fantastic, and it provides at one glance, like, okay, you can refer back to it as you're trying to strategize around your tech.
Yeah, and this chapter has that as a takeaway, where you can go do a profile for yourself, for your company, and then what'll help you do is pick technology that fits and avoid stuff that doesn't. And that's really, honestly, if you do that as a first step, you're on a much better path. We have a lot of people come to us that they pick things because it was neat, it was flashy, but it didn't fit with how they use tech in their business. So I think it's a good chapter, must read for anybody that's applying tech into brokerage right now. Where next? What do you want to talk about next, Paul?
Let's jump to the MLS chapter. I really like this one because we see a new era developing in which MLSs are really looking to innovate, especially around scale and technology. And there's a national network that's beginning to develop, and you can kind of see the sketches of the way this could develop. We don't know how it's going to yet, but there's certain themes that are aligning on as far as scale. Data sharing and management is one. There's shared services. They're pooling services. They're providing a foundation. The member MLSs can come in and leverage them. And so instead of redundancy in all these different MLSs, they can really scale there. And there's some direct technology investment that we've seen. Anything you particularly want to expand on there?
Yeah, I think that it's important for brokers and leaders to recognize, like, if you're not in the MLS space, there's been a lot of work happening, a lot of collaborative work between, MRED and Bright and CRMLS and ListTrack, and, a lot of different MLSs are doing, North Star are doing Stellar, they're doing innovative stuff. And it's not all just the big ones. There's some, other MLSs are in the mix that are doing things as well. Matthew Consalvo and Armless, and so there's some great work being done right now that leads to much better services for members, and I think importantly for brokers who are in multiple MLS markets. So I think it's one of these things where it's easy to, as an industry, it's been easy to complain about the MLS and say it's old, it's antiquated, we're not getting this stuff. There's a whole generation of leadership in MLS right now that's really pushing hard, whether it's MLS Grid or Redistribute or any of these new initiatives that we think people need to know about. It's important work.
So this chapter, we've once again, and this is what we try to do in the Trends Report, we hear all the news about all these disparate things happening in all these different groups, like CRMLS and Bright are two of some of the most active, and this synthesizes kind of the whole movement and provides a framework of like where the MLS is today, and then what some of these MLSs are doing specifically and trying to address, and provide some details on each effort, each collaborative effort. And we have a great map that we present that once you see these groups and these collaborations overlaid onto the map, you can kind of see the future evolving into something much more broader and scaled, and that the industries have for a long time, like, not going to still use the word national MLS, but like a more national experience for brokerage consumers related to MLS. And there's a lot of work going on that.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Where next? What do you want to talk about next, Paul?
Let's how about we talk about, give me a second. Let's go to the talent chapter. And I know we've talked a little bit about that, and the talent is such a key. It's such a key thing right now. Getting really top talent is really critical.
It is. I think one of the big challenges in brokerage is most brokerages. There's key roles in brokerage. Sales, technology, marketing, operations, finance, and then you have the executive function, the oversight, compliance. So you have these functions, and most companies are not big enough where they have a single executive for each one of those roles. They often have an executive that's doing marketing and sales, or is doing operations and finance and all of that. So it's hard to find these unicorns, and you try to find a branch manager who can just do it all. So this chapter, I think, explains what the trends are right now in hiring. Like that, it's hard to find talented people, especially if we move into a constrained market. We're going to not have as much money. People are going to be looking at staffing. Like, what do you do in that constrained market? And how do you reinvest in the people you have so they can take on more? How do you outsource? How do you get help from contract work and where you maybe don't need as many employees? If we're going to go through a thin period over the next couple of years where there's just not as much revenue, thinking about those challenges in talent and being able to find people that can help you do that. I think that the other piece with talent is the pace of it. And this is something I talked to Kelly about a lot, is that the pace of hiring, we're still 4% unemployment rate. And I know that our industry is saying, hey, we're having all these layoffs, but a lot of these layoffs are not the people that you guys are looking for, right? It's not, if you've got a talented branch manager, that's not the person that's getting laid off, right? So it's still, and the pace at which candidates are moving through the market. We see candidates that are talented people, they come on and they're gone in less than 2 weeks. And we still have an industry that can take months to make a hiring decision for an executive role. That just doesn't work anymore, guys. It just doesn't work. So I think the chapter is good guidance on that.
Yeah, and also in the chapter, I really liked it. We laid out some of the most in-demand roles and kind of what they should look like. So it kind of can help brokerages evaluate where they are, what roles they have in place now, and maybe kick test and say, oh, maybe we should have that, or that role should include this. And I think it's a great run through of like, okay, I'm not just alone in the one needing somebody needing this role. So it can also adjust like how aggressive and what is our compensation structure and all that for hiring for these roles.
Yeah, and then the last piece I like about the chapter is we put in job descriptions and key performance metrics for what we think are the 8 hottest jobs that we see for 2023. They're principally brokerage roles. Some of them could be in, like chief growth officer. There's a few of them that could apply to many kinds of businesses, but principally brokerage oriented roles. And Kelly just did I think she did the world a favor by saying, these are key roles. Here's the job descriptions. Here's the KPIs, here, that kind of thing. So you guys don't have to come up with that. So really useful to have that.
Can sharpen your thinking around like how you approach to human capital, just like you do with tech, the complementary to tech. Why don't we go to the single family home investor chapter next? What stood out to you about reading through that chapter, Jack?
Well, a few things stood out. First of all, how much of a mom and pop industry the single family home investor is. And I actually think that's a good thing. It's a good thing. It says this is a vibrant, growing asset class in our country, where there's a lot of people that are purchasing single family. I mean, I'm one of these people. I read the chapter and I was like, oh, this is me. I am, it's my wife and I, and we own a few rental properties here in Austin. We'll probably buy, a property every 2 or 3 years. And we see that as part of our asset portfolio, part of our mix, right? And I think it does a great job of showing the distribution. Like it's still 88% are small investors that own, less than 5 homes that they have as single family home rentals or as rental property. And I think also showed the distribution nationally. There's some markets, like I was blown away, like markets like Las Vegas and Memphis. And there's some markets where, wow, almost into the 20 and 25% of the market are rental property, or the single family home are rental properties there. So it's like, those are very high. That's very high. So it's a lot of, it tells you a lot about how much people like real estate as an investment class, both individually, and then also the growth that we're seeing in the institutional side. We're seeing more larger scale investors that own thousands of homes.
And the significant impact in some communities. I mean, some of these communities, the investor-owned homes is 30%. I mean, in some cities, and that is staggering. And there's also in the chapter there's a stat about in the what type of homes they're looking at. So there's there's a policy impact here too, because lower income lower tier homes, lower price homes, those are getting scooped up by investors, and so that impacts the first time home buyers. So there's all these downstream effects to as we can feel in our communities what happens when big money turns into residential real estate, single family homes. There's some deep impacts to consider. Not all of them are considered in the chapter, but this gets us thinking about what do we want, and what does this look like, and what is the impact of this if this expands.
Yeah, so I think there's some good news there as far as the interest in real estate as an asset class broadly, and by solo small family investors, but also some real questions about affordability and having more people renting, right? So because that's an issue for our industry. We're pro home ownership. We want people to be able to buy homes and build wealth and have personal autonomy and all that. Actually, that leads us into the American Dream chapter, I think, very nicely as well.
Yeah, exactly, and it's a nice compliment. And speaking of that chapter, there's, as we mentioned in the top, this is the one I was really happy we were able to do, because this is kind of the framework upon which we're all operating in this industry of like home ownership and what does it mean, the American dream. And I think there was one interesting study in there and this is one of the few we profiled. There's some land squatters, I think it was in Brazil, and they however it happened, some of them is the exact same scenario, but some of them ended up owning title to their land and some of them did not. And then researchers assess their beliefs or their thoughts about community and capitalism related topics, and the difference in the thinking just in the fact that they own their land and home versus the ones that did not. It shows what the subtle impacts, it suggests some of the subtle impacts that home ownership has on people and families, and the improved outlook, the more incentive to go and feel like empowered to do and live your life in the way you want. And I think that was pretty compelling. So that's an example of some of the compelling, interesting ideas.
I think I think there's some solid. Some of the charts and stats in there are. If I was in real estate brokerage today, I would steal a bunch of charts out of that chapter, because there's some of them that are really great, especially going into next year's market with higher interest rates. It's a little tougher, like giving the agents some ammunition to talk about the benefits of home ownership and what the long-term benefits are. And let's get over the fact that the interest rates are up. Let's get over our current market situation, because the reality is if you own a home, your net worth ends up being a lot higher. Your options explode. You've got so many more options when you own over the lifetime of ownership. And so I think that this chapter does a really good job of showing that, about how
and it's beyond just wealth, it's the ability, it's like health, it's and there's children are doing better. Some of the stuff is self-evident, but we actually in the chapter provide some of the test
scores are higher, community involvement's higher, like you said, the health impacts of being a homeowner versus a renter. So it's an interesting chapter, and I think again, good ammunition into a market where we may have some buyers that are like, I don't know, and it's like, look, this is a lifestyle decision. It's a values decision. Yep. It isn't just am I going to get the best interest rate of the last 20 years decision? It should be driven by that. That's not what it's about. Mm-hmm. That's not what it's about. Mm-hmm. So good intel there. Where to next? What else do we want to?
Maybe the last chapter we review the 7 compelling real estate companies, and I like this chapter because it provides these snapshots of some of these interesting companies that we don't hear about necessarily, or we hear slices of their news, and we provide a little brief snapshot in a hopefully comprehensive way. We try to do it in a very succinct, broad way, so you can kind of say, where's this company now? Where's it headed? And I think one of those is Peerage Realty Partners, they have jumped in. They're Canada-based company, and they've really jumped into the U.S. market in a big way, bigger than people I think maybe realize, because by their numbers, they've acquired a lot of Sotheby's franchisees, and they're on track to be in the top 10 largest brokerage in the U.S. in 2023. Like that's,
yeah.
I don't
And
know if that's on people's radar.
And no one's heard of them.
No.
Yeah, and no one's heard of them. So yeah, no, I agree. I think I've you know, we've done some work with them. We've spoken to them. You know, and they represent. It's interesting. They're one company, but they represent a trend because there's others behind them. That again, we'll probably have to do this chapter again in another year.
Yes.
Because there's other private equity companies that are saying, hey, we can bring liquidity, leadership, management efficiency, and scale into brokerage, working through traditional brokerage brands, not having to fire up some new thing.
And so it goes back to that scale and professional management, because I think it's backed by a private equity-like company. So they have a lot of capital, and they're just professional managers too. And so they know how to sync up the scale, and like they have this executive talent, and they can mastermind with their companies together. And it's a really interesting, you can see that same idea being applied across increasing number of companies, including at World Properties, which we also cover in the report, which at World people might not know that that actual name, but they're fast growing and aggressive with private equity money back. They're at Properties.
Most people know. Most people I think have heard of at Properties, and they think Chicago based, you know, tech forward company. You know, Michael and Thad have built a great engine over there. But what you might not have heard is about how they've gotten a private equity backer. They've acquired a number of firms. They acquired Christie's International Real Estate, and now have they've kind of have blossomed into a much more impactful company in a short period of time.
And with Christie's, it's now they officially made it a franchise brand. It was not an official franchisor, and this year it is. And so the industry has a new major franchise brand that's a part of the landscape now, which is, I imagine we're going to see a lot of movement. It's another big luxury player there, which will play a big role, I'm sure, in years to come. So any other thoughts about the chapter, Jack?
The only other company I wanted to talk in there about was Place, which I think Place, it's Ben Kinney's latest endeavor. Ben and his team looking at basically powering the systems that they're for teams that have expanded into new markets or trying to build much bigger companies, and how they are offering all of these services into those teams to empower them. So it's a really interesting, and this is very interesting. This is a trend where we're seeing companies that their purpose is, we're going to empower, agent teams or brokerages. We'll run back office, we'll run operations, we'll handle, HR, finance, accounting, commissions, payables, all that for your team, and so that you can focus on selling. So I think
they're not a brokerage or a brand or a franchisor, but they're something else.
They're a service. They're a new kind of service provider, and I think Ben and his team are right on the edge of that envelope, driving it with Place, and there's some others right behind them. There's some others that are doing similar things as well.
And there's flavors of it. There's Side, as it's got a lot of press and raising a lot of money.
Yeah.
Well, should we move to wrap and let people know where they can get this and learn more?
Let's do it. Yeah. So there's a lot more, guys, in this book. It's 250 pages. There's a lot in it. We are going to do a deep dive webinar in December with clients and friends. And so there's going to be more. Any one of the chapters in here, I think, is easily an hour to 90 minutes worth of content to go through it and really understand it. And so we're going to be picking apart some of that in December and in coming months. If you would like a copy of the report, we'll have Chris Riley just dropped in a link to get it. We've offered everybody on this webinar today $30 off the report. So go get it. One thing I do want to tell people that Paul and I went back and forth trying to figure out, we've for years tried to figure out how are we going to do digital and print, and because we didn't want to sell a print report and then people just buy it digital, and now we lose the value of the print report. We know some people really value the print report, so we didn't want a digital version. So what we've done this year is we have two options. You can buy a digital only version, or you can buy print, which automatically comes with digital. So those are your two. So you can do it either way. But however you buy it, you get digital access to the report, so you can read it online. We've redone the whole way it's laid out and everything, so it looks great online.
And it comes November, so you have it earlier.
You get it a month earlier.
2023.
Yeah, you get it a month earlier, so you have a copy of it. The other piece that we are throwing in, because we want to show value as we move more to this digital publication, is we're going to include the last 2 years worth of trends reports in it. And if you're a client of ours, if you're a brokerage client of ours, you've worked with us, you know that we refer back to those chapters. I mean, we've got a great chapter on ancillary business, great chapters on broker profitability. We've got all these chapters in our most recent reports. So we're going to give you an additional 2 years of our past reports that you can go through. And there's some high value chapters there for sure for brokerage operations. There's still good reads today. I refer to clients all the time. I say, hey, you need to read this. We wrote it in 2019 or 2020. Still valid today. Still useful. So and Chris also did put in there, if you're part of an association, you're part of an organization, and you'd like to do a bulk order, you can reach directly out to Chris. We're doing bulk orders. Well, we're also doing special presentations. So if you do a bulk order and you'd like to ask about a special presentation, we can do either a live in person or a remote presentation, work with your board, take you through key chapters in the report that should be covered. We think that that's, Paul, I told you earlier today, I talked to a state association, and we're going to do an in-person. They're getting copies of the report for all their board members. They'll get them in November digital. Then we're going to go out there in December and talk to them. So if that's of interest to you, that's an offer we're making to any organization that wants to bring the trends really into their strategy and planning work that they're doing for next year. So, Paul, any closing words or anything else?
I just want to say I'm really excited to get this to the light of day and give it to leaders in the industry, and that they can use it and push and evolve the industry forward and innovate. And I hope, and that's designed to be that tool. And I'm really looking forward to getting feedback and getting it out there for you guys.
Yeah, and I think this is a new era for our company. As much as Paul has been involved with the report, this is really the first year that you've really drove it and really worked with our whole team to identify the trends and put it together and really made it happen. And just as the chief executive of the company, I want to say thank you for the work you did on this report. It's fantastic. I know this is not just a job for you, Paul, and it's a labor of love, and you did an amazing job for this year, because everything I've read has been just top notch. And I hope everybody on the call finds it the same. And we do pick up a copy in advance, so you can get it for a little bit less. So go grab one. All right, and that's it. I just want to say thank you for everybody that showed up, took some time out of their day. Some of you will see next week at the T3 Tech Summit in Newport Beach, California. If you're coming up to Newport Beach, looking forward to seeing you there. If you don't know anything about the Tech Summit, go to t3techsummit.com. This is a new event we're doing. We've had a lot of fun putting it together. And if you're in Southern California, we've got day passes. We got you. So just come on by. We'd love to have people come and check out some of all the new technology that we think is coming into the industry. So let's wrap with that. And thank you, Paul, for your time. Thank you, Chris, for helping us man the tubes, and everybody else. We will talk to you guys on our later webinars this year.